But we went to the ACC. Now we go to the Big 12. Houston at home gets the dub, 76-65 over Baylor, which obviously is a bit undermanned. Getting healthy in some spots, but as they get healthy in some spots, they obviously lose their starting big man, and they're kind of having to change on the fly here and play smaller, which did not really work that well against this Houston team on the road at all. Tough ask, RC, to try to change your play, your style of play, and go on the road at Houston for your first experiment. But Houston indeed does get the win. They're getting healthier. Emmanuel Sharp was back for this one, and Kelvin Sampson was kind of talking him up before the game. You know, I covered Houston pretty closely when they were in the American, so I got to see them twice, sometimes 3 times a year. And you know what you're getting out of them. And it just felt like, again, tonight, that physical brand of basketball, they're just leaning on teams, man. How good is this Houston team?
Gerard, you go ahead.
Oh, God. I mean, I'll start off and saying I think they're really good, obviously, and we kind of know their blueprint and the way that they do things. You know, they got the defensive stamp with all the Kelvin Sampson teams have, so they're gonna grind you up. They're gonna be tough. They're gonna be physical. They're gonna rebound the ball well. And I think really the only shortcoming that they have this year, and I don't even know if it's a shortcoming, I think it's just a little bit of a trade-off, and we've been talking about it a little bit as the season has progressed, is just I still think they kind of just missing that perimeter playmaker like that they hadn't shed. But they also, I think that the trade-off is that I think they shoot a little bit better from outside this year, and they got more guys that can stretch the floor and keep the defense a little bit more honest. But you know, tonight was a tough one for Baylor and Houston for the most part. Baylor did compete, but man, they pretty much held it down from wire to wire, and you know, Baylor turned the ball over, and that's a no to do with Houston on the road. So they turned a lot of those points into easy buckets on the other end, and eventually they just warmed down. Baylor only played like 7 guys, and they're really small right now, with O'Meara being pretty much one of the biggest guy on the floor. So they got beat up a little bit inside, man. But it just wasn't really the best night for Baylor. But still impressive the way those guys competed. And like you said, I think if they're able to get healthy at some point in time, that they'll be able to test some people and possibly get into the tournament too.
Yeah. RC, I feel like, you know, when we have that discussion in college basketball about like who the best coach is, right? People want to talk about Bill Self. They want to talk about Dan Hurley. They want to talk about Tom Izzo. I feel like, and maybe this is anecdotal, maybe they are mentioning him in conversations that I'm not having, but it just feels like Kelvin Sampson never gets mentioned as that top guy. And I feel like, you know, this is just me, but if I was picking a dude to run my program, it would be him. Because like the consistency that they play with every game, I don't know. I don't know who else does it, man. I mean, that's the hallmark to me of Houston basketball. Is like they're not going to turn the ball over, right? They're going to defend you like hell, and they're just going to try to pulverize you into submission. They're not always going to win. They win a lot, but I don't know. I mean, who's more consistent, man, in the regular season than these Houston Cougars?
Now, you think Indiana will want him back right about now?
Bro, he got fired for sending text messages.
You think they want him back right about now? No,
I mean, it's insane.
It's the only thing. The only reason he's not mentioned in the conversation of the guys you just mentioned, those list of names of coaches, is because he hadn't won a natty yet. That's the only thing missing from his resume. That's the only thing he's missing. He's as good as advertised. He's everything you just said. As respected as anybody in college basketball. That's just the only thing that's missing. And he has a team this year. Doshed's gone. He has a better offensive team. He just needs his guys to be healthy. Can they remain healthy for here on out, rest of the year? They started out a little sluggish. They're playing as well as anyone. I think they're going to win the Big 12. I think they'll put themselves in position to have a number 1 seed. They're good enough offensively to make a run, and that's why I like their chances. If they keep the high seed, and if they can stay healthy, they do. They play such a physical brand of basketball. Hell, they beat themselves up. But yeah. I like the balance of their team. I like the multiple guys that can score it. They just compete. They play hard. They're gonna turn you over, and they're gonna rebound the hell out of the ball. Like it's just, and they're not gonna beat themselves. That's the other thing. sometimes they always say teams that press don't like to be pressed. They're not turning the ball over either. So they're not going to beat themselves. You're going to have to really, really physically beat them. They're going to be a tough out when it's time to dance. When it comes March Madness, they're going to be a tough ass out, and their guard play is legit. The depth of their backcourt, what they play in the front court with those guys, I love what they are. And like you said, he's one of the best. He's just one of those guys. He just needs to get that on his resume. It doesn't validate or change anything, but he's deserving
in
of
that conversation.
Yeah,
you're right. That is,
he's deserving of it, and he needs to do that because there are standards that come with that when you win it. And as respected as he is, the only thing missing from his cabinet is being a head coach of leading Houston to the Natty.
Yeah, I just feel like he doesn't get enough love, and what I especially appreciate about him is that this is a sport that has fast talkers. Everybody's kind of like hiding the ball a little bit. Like Kelvin Sampson is not going to bullshit you, and like a good example of that is like they're going on the road. It's the game before they go on to Colorado over the weekend, and Kelvin is like, "We need rest. We have played 5 games in 16 days or whatever it was." And he's like, "We are banged up and we need rest more than anything else." And they go to Colorado and they kind of struggle a little bit, right? They don't really shoot the ball very well. They end up winning the game. They end up putting it away, but he kind of hit. And then before the game today, he's like, "We're getting Emmanuel Sharp back and we're a different team when we have Emmanuel Sharp in the lineup. They shoot 42% from 3. So I just appreciate Jarrell. Like Kelvin Sampson is not going to sugarcoat it. He's not going to bullshit you. He's going to tell you the truth. And he's usually right.
Yeah, and it's one of the things where it kind of makes people gravitate toward him a little bit more is because he is he's himself. Like, he's super genuine. It's not a facade. Like you said, it's not a fast talking. It's not an act for the most part. Kind of what you see is what you get with him. And sometimes he's brutally honest. I love that about him. As a coach in this day and age, it's just like, it is what it is. He's laying all his cards on the table, man. And he's one of the best coaches in our business. I think RC hit it on the head. Obviously just still missing that last tap as a national title. But I'll say this: when the day he gets it, and he does it at Houston, it's probably going to be worth like 2.
No question. Because he brought this program up for the dead, right?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
He brought Houston up to this team is we're talking about the last couple of years, whether Houston can win a national championship or not, and wherever you thought how deep they could go, whatever it was, they were in the conversation. They've been in the conversation. This is Houston that we hadn't talked about since Hakeem Olajuwon was walking on campus.
Right.
You know what I mean? And he's been retired for 100 years. So, listen, hell of a coach, Hall of Fame type coach, and deserving of it. Like, I really do wish he can get him one.
Hey, by the way, Aubrey Coleman was a bucket. My man, Aubrey Coleman,
a killer.
Yeah.
I'm kind of being funny, but he was a bucket though. He's no Hakeem Olajuwon. He's no 5 slam jamming those 8th place Conference USA teams.
No, what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like, but now he has them among the best teams in the country. Is what I'm saying. Like,
yes,
they're
right
there. He doesn't always.
They're
have
a national topic year in.
But they are. Yes, they are. Yes, they're a perennial top 10 team in the country that you don't want to play.
100%.
Nobody wants.
And by the way, like the cool thing about it too is like a lot of the dudes that he came in with are still with him. Like that's the impressive piece. Like you get around Kelvin, like there's loyalty there, man. And I just love the way he runs. If you can't tell, I just love the way that man runs his basketball program.